Hello and welcome to Planet Hope, the programme that follows the progress made towards the UN's Millennium Development Goals, the 8 targets adopted by 193 nations and that need to be met by 2015. This week we're going to look at number 1 on the UN's list, reducing poverty and famine. The southern Saharan region of the Sahel is bracing itself for another famine. The international organisations have begun appealing for donors to help an estimated 1 million children that are so severely malnourished that their lives are already at risk. Well, France 24 travelled to Chad, to the desert region of Kanem. This report from Audrey Racine, Johan Baudin and Stephen Carroll.
6 months old, but weighing less than 7 kilos. Some 200 children are being examined at this clinic today. Many are malnourished, others seriously underweight. Consultations here have doubled since February. The food shortage has come early this year. Cereals harvested last autumn are running out, 3 months earlier than usual. The young are the first victims. They fall ill easily when they haven't enough to eat. Mothers spend long hours in the searing heat with their children, waiting to see a nurse. Many have travelled long distances to be here. Khadija ALAMIN has brought her youngest daughter, Zara, to be examined.
She has diarrhea, she's vomiting, she isn't eating.
How long has it been?
6 days. She's been ill for 6 days.
When children finally get to see a doctor, it may sometimes be too late. Some of them will already have been brought to see traditional healers.
What's that? Why did you mark her as a hot iron?
I did it with my other children too, otherwise they won't get better.
Even more than a lack of food, scarring and mutilation can put infants' lives in danger. Nearly 1 in 5 children in Chad will die before they reach their 5th birthday, one of the highest child mortality rates in the world. Zara's condition worries the head of this centre. She hasn't put on any weight in 8 weeks.
Why don't you want to bring her to the hospital?
I have other children, and there's nobody to look after them. If there was someone, fine, but I have to feed them every morning and evening and take them to school. I can't put her in hospital.
There are many like Khadija who will refuse to hospitalise their children. She leaves with some medicine and an oral prescription which she has to remember. Few here know how to read. In the poverty-stricken desert region of Kanem in western Chad, there are efforts underway to change the way people think about healthcare.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello. Now our programme about nutrition.
Radio N'Djamina's programmes are almost all about health, with a particular focus on combating malnutrition among its audience.
80% of our listeners are illiterate, and they're in rural areas, so we have to explain and repeat the same message so they'll understand how important their health is.
Ahmed ABDOULAYE has been preaching this message in the desert for more than 10 years. He's a volunteer using material donated by international organisations working in Chad. But slowly, the message is starting to get through. Here, some 30 mothers have agreed to bring their children to hospital, and there are more who keep arriving. But in this vast region of Kanem, there are just 3 makeshift hospitals and a handful of medics who look after the most serious cases. The medical centre in Mao, the oldest in the area, is overwhelmed. Tents supplied by UNICEF for emergency shelter have become permanent fixtures. Among the new arrivals today, little Khadija.
3 kilograms, 600 grams.
Weighing under 4 kilos at 7 months old, her mother brought her here so she wouldn't suffer the same fate as her elder brother.
God gave me 2 children and he took 1 away. The other baby has become thin like him. He fell ill and then he died.
She's spending 2 weeks here with her daughter. That's how much time it will take Khadija to gain some weight through therapeutic feeding. If she has no other medical problems, these few days of regular food and proper nutrition should see her make a full recovery. Far from the hospital, Zara, the little girl who'd been branded with a hot iron, has come home. Her mother wasn't convinced to take her daughter to hospital. But from her appointment with the doctor, she's been given plenty of food rations rich in vitamins and minerals. Called Plumpy Nut, it's well known here as a means of helping children gain weight. With these sachets, Zara can eat for a week. Not so for the rest of the family. This grain is all that Khadija has left to feed her 3 other children.
There's enough here for 2 meals.
And for now, no money to refill the store. At the market, there's plenty of choice if you have money to spend. Lots of tomatoes, okra and grain, the basis of all meals in this region.
How much for the bowl of this?
The bowl? 800 francs.
How much?
800 francs.
That's the equivalent of €1.20, far too expensive for Khadija. Too much, in fact, for most families in Chad. The average income here is just €33 a month. When cereals started to run short, they tripled in price. A long drought meant the last harvest was a poor one. It's estimated that grain production in Chad fell by more than a quarter compared to the previous year. The government and international organisations were put on alert. They now fear a famine this summer. To fight the rising cost of food, the charity Action Against Hunger has created grain banks in the Kanem region. This one, in Chile, has been here for 3 months.
The beautiful bank.
Today, the contents are being inspected.
The sacks can't stay on the ground. It's not good for storing grain.
The NGO constructed this building and filled it with millet. It then must be sold at a reduced price to people in the village when cereals on the market become too expensive. With the money raised, the people of Chile will buy food at its cheapest during the harvest. It's a way of curtailing speculation on food prices.
From this first stock, and we hope that the next harvest will be better than last year's, it gives them the capacity to refill the store themselves or even increase it.
It's a long-term strategy, but the next harvest is in September, a long way off. Following the NGO's recommendations to wait and save the supplies won't be easy.
We are very worried at the moment. Very worried because we're already hungry. We're just waiting for the instruction to open the store and to start working.
Until recently, these were people who didn't have to worry about going hungry. They'd left to find their fortune working in Libya. Every month, they could send money back to their families where it was so badly needed. But when the war broke out and oil production ground to a halt, 90,000 of them came back to Chad. They brought with them suitcases full of items to sell, but not enough to avoid poverty or overcome their regret at having to leave their new home.
Libya. You know what? Libya was an oil-producing country, a rich country. You could find everything you wanted. Here, even if you have money, you can't find anything. There's nothing good to eat. Compared to Libya, there's nothing at all.
They've become a burden to the families they once supported, a new element in this looming food crisis. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, has put in place a scheme to help some of them to train as farmers.
Soon we will start digging and then bring the pipes here to be laid.
Although dry and dusty, this ground is fertile. The FAO's agricultural engineer is promising a first harvest here in 3 months. And this isn't his first attempt. Just a few metres from there, fields of crops, green leaves, peppers, corn and salads. They can all be cultivated in the wadis, little oases in the desert. Evidence of Gondo's success and that of the farmers. It's been 2 years since the last food crisis hit the Sahel region. Since then, the FAO has been trying to help the most vulnerable people. This agricultural cooperative was one of the first to be established. Today, there are 165 of them around Kanem. In each, the FAO brought 12 people together, convinced the landowner to loan his land, then dug a well and installed a pump to extract water.
With all this, they've managed to cope with bad weather, which can affect their production. Of what's grown in the wadis, they can consume some and sell some to buy grain for elsewhere.
2 years later, almost all of the cooperatives are turning a profit, to the delight of the new farmers. After the success of this model, the FAO has been examining the hospital records of malnourished children. For every baby who's dying of hunger, a whole family is suffering. These are families who no longer need to depend on handouts.
Now, what do I have? I have my cucumbers, my salads, my tomatoes. When I go home now, I have all of that to eat.
These crops, the water brought in by the FAO, with education, with cookery demonstrations, all this means these people won't be as badly affected by the crisis that's coming.
Saved by their own efforts, a privilege in a region that currently only produces 5% of the food it needs. Although this project is on a small scale, there are thousands of hectares of land that could be developed. The aim that the children of Kanem may one day have enough to eat.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Planet Hope. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24 and see you soon.